Hello, my dear friends. I'm Dr. Vaishali Bharambe. I'm an MBBS MD PhD in anatomy. I've been teaching anatomy for more than 25 years and I love it. Of lately, I've found that there is a distance a student has to walk from the point where anatomy department ends and where the surgical department begins. Any surgical department, may it be obs and gynae, may it be surgery, may it be ENT, ophthalm, anything. And this distance is basically knowledge of surgical anatomy. So I have started a series on surgical anatomy so that you get the information you should know before you study or perform surgeries in various regions. Today we're going to discuss liver transplant surgery anatomical perspectives. We are very well aware that liver is a huge topic, but I'm going to pick up only those aspects which you need to understand liver transplant surgeries. Remember, notes for this lecture and all surgical anatomy lectures are available in the form of handouts on my website vbanatomy.com. Please feel free to access them there and study them. So I'm going to place that anatomy that you need to understand liver transplant surgery. Let's begin. First, where is the liver? Just bring ourselves into the class. We know that liver is in the right hypochondrium, epigastrium and left hypochondrium region, covered by 7 to 11th ribs and intercostal spaces. We know that it's a wedge-shaped organ having anterior, superior, posterior, inferior and right lateral surfaces. They're all here. Can you tell which is which? Yes. So this is anterior surface, superior, posterior, inferior, right lateral. Easy? So all of these are covered by the Glisson's capsule and a few areas are left bare, which are called as bare areas. Right. So now let's open the abdomen. When you open the abdomen, what do you see? You see that there is a falciform ligament that is extending from the abdominal wall to the liver. Okay. So you can see the falciform ligament here. You can see it attaching itself to which surface of liver? Anterior surface of liver. Right. So this anterior surface is covered by 6 to 10th ribs, 7 to 8 costal cartilages. Okay, this is the anterior surface and it shows attachment from anterior of the falciform ligament. This is the transverse section. Okay, you can see how the falciform ligament is getting attached to the liver. What is this falciform ligament? The falciform ligament is a sickle-shaped peritoneal double fold containing within its free margin the obliterated left umbilical vein and some paraumbilical veins which are sites of portocaval anastomosis. So what is this left umbilical vein? The left umbilical vein actually is that vein which was carrying blood from the placenta to the liver. Okay, you can see it here. This is before birth. Okay, so from the placenta, blood is coming through umbilicus, through left umbilical vein till it reaches the liver, where it continues in the form of ductus venosus. So ductus venosus is a venous tube which is helping to drain this blood directly into inferior vena cava, somewhat bypassing the liver. So what happens at birth? When you are born, what happens is that the placenta is going to pack up. So the left umbilical vein obliterates to form ligamentum teres hepatis, which is now found in our falciform ligament. The ductus venosus also closes shop, forming ligamentum venosum. Okay, these are some of the terminologies you're going to come across in the rest of the lecture. So now let's attach the falciform ligament to the liver anteriorly, ligamentum teres hepatis and ligamentum venosum posteriorly to divide the liver into right 5/6 and left 1/6. This is called anatomical divisions of liver or anatomical lobes of liver. In this way, here, you can see this division, you can see the falciform ligament, you can see the ligamentum venosum and the ligamentum teres here. So you can see a rather large right lobe and rather small left lobe. What are these other small bits? The lobes that are now defined from posterior surface are the caudate lobe and the quadrate lobe, which in anatomical different separation belong to the right lobe. Okay, so what is this physiological division of liver? What is cholecystostomia cable line? Where does caudate and quadrate lobe come into this game? Let's understand. Okay, so what have we discussed up till now? We've talked about anterior surface, falciform ligamentum, left umbilical vein, ligamentum venosum, caudate lobe, quadrate lobe, anatomical dissection. Does it matter? Do anatomical lobes matter? Not functionally. Okay, so we have to now understand functional lobes of liver. If you're enjoying this lecture, do like and subscribe to my channel. It will encourage me to create more of these informative videos. Thank you. Let's continue. So we've done the anterior surface. Let's just go up. Okay, so now looking at liver from above. So this green colored surface, it's only colored for your understanding, is the superior surface of liver. You can see how falciform ligament gets attached and then divides into a layer that goes to the left and a layer that goes to the right. The layer that goes to the left forms the left triangular ligament. The layer that goes to the right forms the superior layer of coronary ligament. And this border that you're seeing is the posterior-superior border of liver, which is the posterior boundary of the superior surface of liver. Okay. Now let's, superior done, tilt a little to the right, you're going on to the right lateral surface of liver. So here you see that the right lateral surface of liver is related to 7th to 11th ribs and their intercostal spaces. But till the 8th rib is the lung, till the 10th rib is the costodiaphragmatic recess. If you want to do a liver biopsy, where will you put in your needle? You will put in your needle below the 8th rib so as to avoid damaging the lung during your liver biopsy. Patient will hold breath and you will put in your needle. You don't want to damage your lung while taking a liver biopsy. Right. So anterior done, superior done, right lateral done. Let's go back. Posterior surface. So now you're looking at the liver from posteriorly. This is the posterior superior border we've talked about. And this here is the posterior inferior border. And the area bound by this in between is the posterior surface of liver. Okay. So we're going to study posterior surface from right to left systematically and talk about the relevant anatomy. So here is your posterior surface of liver, which shows presence of an area which is called as the bare area, bound above by the superior layer of coronary ligament, below by the inferior layer of coronary ligament, joining to form the right triangular ligament. And the area in between them is this bare area bound medially by the inferior vena cava. This area, okay, what is the peritoneal recess related here? I'm sure you will be able to answer this. See if you can. If you cannot, you will find out the answer in the end anyway. So this is the bare area which is related to the right suprarenal gland. How does it matter? So the answer to that is if you are dissecting in this region for, so then for mobilization of right lobe of liver, be careful, otherwise you will damage the right adrenal gland which is related directly to the liver here. Now let's come a little to the left. We can see the inferior vena cava and the groove for inferior vena cava. This is my inferior vena cava. I'm going to remove it. And I see that liver drains via hepatic veins into the inferior vena cava. These hepatic veins are divided into upper and lower. Upper are 3, right, middle, left. Lower are 2 on the left, 1 on the right. And there are variations, of course. So here in this image, you can see the right hepatic vein, left middle hepatic vein, left hepatic vein. Now, this is very important and that's why we're going into the details of it. This is important from understanding functional lobes of liver. We will get into that soon. So now I'm looking at a liver which seems to be broken up by presence of veins in it. Okay. So there are 3 fissures I want you to understand. There is a main fissure, right fissure, left fissure, which is going to divide your liver into 4 parts. So first, the main portal fissure. This is represented by the middle hepatic vein. If you draw a line from the gallbladder up to the inferior vena cava, called as the cholecystocaval line or the Cantilese line, you're dividing the liver into two physiological lobes, one right, one left. Okay. Now let's draw another fissure, the right portal fissure, which is represented by the right hepatic vein. This helps to divide your right part of the liver into right anterior and right posterior. Some authors have called it medial and lateral as well. Now there is a third fissure here, the left portal fissure. Some authors have called it the umbilical fissure as the left portal fissure. This helps to divide your liver into left medial and left lateral part. So this is how your liver gets divided into sectors. Okay. Finally, there's also an umbilical fissure I want you to focus here. This is the point where the left umbilical vein or the ligamentum teres hepatis enters into the liver. So what have we learnt? We saw that the liver is divided into two physiological right and left lobes by the middle hepatic vein or the Cantilese line. It's divided, the right is divided into two sectors by right hepatic vein, left is divided into two sectors by left hepatic vein, or some call it the say that the division is by umbilical fissure. Finally, each of these is going to be divided into further segments. How? Let's understand. So what did Coinot do? Coinot had created the concept of segmental anatomy of liver. Okay, what does it mean? The liver was divided into 8 functional segments such that this division was based on distribution of portal and hepatic veins. Each segment had its own vascular inflow, vascular outflow, bile outflow. Understand this. Each had its own vascular inflow through hepatic artery, portal vein, vascular outflow through hepatic vein, bile secretion through the relevant bile duct. So this each was one Coinot segment. Okay. So the principle is that it is possible to surgically resect segments without damaging the functionality of the other segments. So understand that your Coinot segments are decided by presence of hepatic veins which vertically divide the liver and portal veins which help to divide the liver into superior and inferior segments. That's the grid created by these two structures. So now we are looking at the liver. One is going to be the caudate lobe, which almost functions independently. Okay. 2, 3, 4. So 2 and 3 are left lateral superior, left lateral inferior. 4 is the left medial. This can also be divided into 4A above and 4B below. Then 5 and 8 are right anterior. So 5 is right anterior inferior, 8 is right anterior superior. 6 and 7 are right posterior. So 6 is right posterior inferior, 7 is right posterior superior. And these are your Coinot's segments. Remember that segment 1 lies posteriorly between the inferior vena cava and the left lobe. Segment 2, 4, 8, 7 lie above the portal vein. Segment 3, 4B, 5 and 6 lie below the portal vein. What's all this? Understand. I'll show you a couple of images. It's very easy to understand. So when you look at the liver from different angles, different segments are visible. For example, if you're looking from the top, only the superior segments will be visualized well. If you're looking from anteriorly, the posterior most segment, 1, is not seen at all. Okay? If you're looking from below, then maybe some other one is not seen at all. So that's how from different angles, different segments are visualized. This is the segmental anatomy of liver. Now this is a segment which is taken at a higher level. So you can see how the division occurs inside. This is the middle hepatic vein. This is the right hepatic vein, which is helping to divide the liver. If you come lower, then your section goes through the left portal vein. If you come further lower, your section goes through the right portal vein, and therefore only those related hepatic segments. And if you go further lower, your section goes through the lowermost segments of the liver, along with a section through the splenic vein. So if you look carefully at different sections, different segments of the liver are visualized. Okay. So what have we learned? We learned that liver is divided into right and left physiological lobes by the middle hepatic vein or the Cantel's line. Then we understood that lobes are divided into sectors, right anterior, right posterior, left medial, left lateral. Then we talked about how each of these was divided to form coinod segments. One is an individual, second, third, fourth come on the left, 5, 6, 7, 8 come on the right. Hepatic veins, and what do they drain? We know that the vertical sections of liver was done by planes of hepatic veins. So right hepatic vein drains adjacent sides of 6, 7, 8 and 5. Middle hepatic vein drains adjacent sides of 5, 8, 4A, 4B. The left hepatic vein drains 2, 3, 4A and 4B. One is said to be draining directly through Spigelian veins into the inferior vena cava. There are a lot of variations in this. You can read up about these variations in this and many other articles available. Importance of coinods hepatic segments, why discuss them? This segmentation is important for resection of liver, transplantation of liver, treatment of liver diseases. It allows surgeons to plan procedures and target specific segments without damaging others. It minimalizes damage to liver overall function. By dividing the liver based on functional anatomy, the coinod classification provides a more precise way of liver surgery and therefore improving outcomes and reducing risks of complications. Continuing with our discussion. So, here you can see the caudate lobe, okay, which lies between the fissure of ligamentum venosum and the inferior vena cava. What is the papillary process of liver? What is its clinical significance? This projection here is the papillary process here, and it can sometimes be, if it's very projectile, it can be mistaken to be a lymph node. Now, the caudate lobe sometimes can enclose the inferior vena cava partly or completely, forming a hepatocaval ligament. If it's only ligament, then it is a vascular structure. But sometimes hepatic parenchyma only comes and encloses the inferior vena cava, forming what is called as the pons hepatis. Okay, so this can be damaged during the procedure and must be looked out for. You can see the caudate lobe, which is the only part of liver which is related to the lesser sac in the abdomen. You can see how the peritoneum of the lesser sac lines the caudate lobe over here, while the lesser omentum gets attached to the liver at the groove for ligamentum venosum. So this double fold of peritoneum which is getting attached to the liver here is called as the lesser omentum. See how this is the stomach, this is the lesser omentum passing upwards to get attached to the liver. You can see it better over here, and now I am dissecting it open to show you all the structures you will find behind the lesser omentum and in the right free margin of lesser omentum, DAV. Ducts, artery, vein. Which ducts? Hepatic ducts. Which artery? Hepatic artery. Which vein? Portal vein. And now if you look carefully, this is the right free margin I talked about. And behind it, there is a small little foramen through which you can put in your finger, which is called as the epiploic foramen. Bound above by caudate lobe, below by first part of duodenum, anteriorly by right free margin of lesser omentum, posteriorly by the inferior vena cava. Now, this is a wonderful diagram, okay? So, I've always remembered my whole anatomy of epiploic foramen using this one single diagram. Right. So, continuing with our discussion on lesser omentum, here's the lesser omentum, here's the right free margin, okay, which is containing DAV, like I said, okay, and here is the epiploic foramen, which is communicating the greater sac which surrounds the liver to the lesser sac, which is the space behind the stomach. So, here's the lesser sac. So, you can also, why are we discussing all this? What has it got to do with our liver surgery? So, putting a clamp at the right free margin of lesser omentum stops all blood supply to the liver In this way, it reduces blood loss during hepatectomies or any other surgery involving the liver. So that knowledge comes handy here. Continuing with posterior surface of liver, you will see that there is a groove for ligamentum venosum. Here's the ligamentum venosum, and this is the groove in which the lesser omentum is getting attached. To the left of that is the groove for esophagus. So what did you see in posterior surface? We discussed bare area. We talked about the inferior vena cava. Then we extended this to talk about segmentations of liver. We came back to talk about caudate lobe, fissure for ligamentum venosum, and the posterior and the groove for esophagus. Now let's go a little below and come to the inferior surface of liver. That's the last surface to be discussed. The inferior surface has some peculiarities in that it is visceral. It's related to viscera. It's covered by peritoneum with very few non-peritoneal areas. So which peritoneum and which organs? Stomach, pylorus, gallbladder, duodenum, colon, and right kidney are viscera related to the inferior surface. Non-peritoneal are areas such as fissure for ligamentum teres, porta hepatis, and the gallbladder. Okay, so fissure for ligamentum teres we've already done. So let's talk about the porta hepatis. Porta hepatis is a port through which structures enter into the liver or exit from it. Which structures? Okay, hepatic ducts, hepatic arteries, portal vein, hepatic plexus of nerves. These are structures found here. So the hepatic ducts which are draining through the liver are actually formed at the level of bile canaliculi, which through canals of Henry form the bile ductules. The bile ductules form right and left hepatic ducts, which you can see over here, which come out of the liver at the porta hepatis. They unite to form a common hepatic duct. This meets with the cystic duct to form the common bile duct. This is the hepatocyte surrounded by bile canaliculi, which is the beginning of the biliary secretion. What about the hepatic artery? Hepatic artery lies behind the bile ducts. Okay, it's a branch of the common hepatic artery or a continuation of the common hepatic artery over here. After it gives off the right gastric, here's the hepatic artery. Once through the portal, at the porta hepatis, it divides into right hepatic artery and the left hepatic artery. The right hepatic artery gives a cystic artery and then goes on to supply 5, 6, 7, 8 and 1 segment. The left hepatic artery supplies 2, 3, 4 and a little bit to the 1, which is supposed to be a site where the two arteries anastomose. What about the portal vein, which lies third? The portal vein enters inside to divide into right portal vein and the left portal vein. The right gives rise to right lateral sectoral vein, the right medial sectoral vein. Right lateral supplying 6 and 7. The right medial supplying 5 and 8. And the left goes on to supply you can see the left going on to supply 2, 3 and 4. There are a lot of variations in the portal vein as well. Sometimes you will have this bifurcation into right and left. Sometimes you will have a trifurcation. Sometimes you will have right portal vein and right posterior portal vein completely absent. You may not have a bifurcation at all as seen here and so on. So this portal vein shows a lot of variations at the porta hepatis. If you are enjoying this lecture, do like and subscribe to my channel. It will encourage me to create more of these videos. Let's continue with last bit of discussion, gallbladder. Gallbladder is covered by peritoneum, but where it's related to the liver, were you to remove the gallbladder, there's a clear bare area. Okay, so this extends up from the cystic notch to the porta hepatis. It's related to the gallbladder. This area shows presence of loose areolar tissue, which contains the deep branch of cystic artery and vein. In this too, you will find a lot of variations. But at this point, I want to introduce the Kellogg's triangle. Kellogg's triangle is a triangular area, okay, which is bound on one side by the common hepatic duct, on the other side by the cystic duct, and superiorly by the inferior border of surface of liver. In this triangular area, a lot of anatomical relevant structures can be found. Cystic artery, lymph node of Lund, aberrant bile ducts and arteries are all found here. This area must be dissected properly, explored. Why? During cholecystectomy, Callo's triangle helps you to identify cystic artery, cystic duct, common hepatic duct, injuries to all should be avoided to prevent biliary duct related damage. Inflammation of gallbladder can lead to adhesions and the whole Callo's triangle area can be quite changed. This needs you to have a good knowledge of anatomy to be able to dissect correctly. Callo's triangle is a key area in surgical education to prevent iatrogenic injuries. Cystic artery itself shows a lot of variations. Expect them when you approach the Callo's triangle area. Finally, understand that the liver itself, shows a lot, is related to spaces which are called as subphrenic spaces, which are further subdivided into suprahepatic and infrahepatic. With the suprahepatic here is divided into right and left. The infrahepatic shows presence of two special areas, right and left. The right, hepatorenal pouch of Morrison, and left, which is the lesser sac itself. I cannot talk about lesser sac in this because it becomes too long a lecture. But let's just take a look at the next image to understand. Here you're seeing a horizontal person lying down and you can see the liver and the kidney and you can see a little pouch of peritoneum here which is called hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. What is the significance? Why is it important enough for me to end my class on it? Most dependent part of peritoneal cavity in the upper part of abdomen. It's a very common site for subphrenic abscess. It's asked very often. It is very relevant from these abdominal surgeries point of view, especially that of liver. So I hope you enjoyed this lecture. I hope you learned a lot. I would love some feedback from all of you regarding whether this surgical anatomy series is really helping you. Okay, so thank you and I'll see you across the screen in my next surgical anatomy lecture.